Once I realized that the flight crew was crying, I knew the plane was going down, which should have been good news considering that I was planning on killing myself by the time I turned 27 anyway. But now that I was face to face with death, I was starting to have second thoughts. When I turned to the flight attendant for comfort after our first 20-second free fall, she didn't even look up from her lap. I don't think she wanted anyone to catch her sobbing. And that was the scariest part, not my stomach lurching into my throat, not the hushed prayers and snivels of my fellow passengers, not even the grinding metallic screech of a failing engine choking out its final breath. The scariest part was seeing that the people in charge were just as freaked out as I was. Suddenly, the seatbelt sign flashed, the overhead lights went dim, and the cabin got quiet. My arms began to float, my seatbelt sliced into my waist, and all conventional laws of gravity stopped applying to my body. I've seen this movie before, and I know how it ends. We're all going to die. Cue another 20 seconds, 20, of sheer weightlessness and deafening silence. No one was screaming, "What's going on here?" or "I demand to speak with the pilot." You could almost hear a single tear brushing past the microscopic cheek hairs of the lady next to me. No one said a word, but we all knew what was about to happen. I always thought that knocking on death's door would make me reflect on all the things I never got the chance to do. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to own a Lamborghini. I wanted my band to tour with Korn, live out my bucket list. But here I was, trapped inside of a metal tube, free-falling from 35,000 feet, with none of those things. And curiously, I didn't think about them. I simply wondered, who did I get to be? And the kicker was, I wasn't exactly sure. Here's some context. At 26 years old, I had battled schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, PTSD, and some pretty severe anxiety and OCD for my entire life. In and out of treatment, living through unspeakable abuse, and daydreaming about suicide, with a few botched attempts under my belt already. And when I wasn't busy having existential crises aboard crashing airplanes, I was touring in a metal band called Prison, and we were moderately successful, had a couple million plays on Spotify, but we weren't headlining arenas. And I was also a few years into my role as the founder of a tech startup called Cope Notes, and we were moderately successful too, growing quickly and changing people's lives, but we were no Amazon. And while I worked my fingers to the bone, I viewed my life not through the lens of who I got to be, but through the lens of what I hadn't done. And through that lens, I would always be a failure, no matter what I did. Looking back, I know that the people in first class might have had and done all those things I thought were on my bucket list. Maybe their bands had toured with Korn and Slipknot. Maybe they owned 10 Lamborghinis, but those accomplishments wouldn't save them. They were going to die with me. Death is an equal opportunity employer. The Grim Reaper wasn't strolling through the aisles of this 747, cherry-picking survivors like, "You, good sir, have lived a conventionally successful life. You get a pass." But the dude next to you with 1/10 of your net worth and a depression diagnosis, he's got to go. First class or economy seats, we were all going to die. When it came down to it, my real bucket list was super short, hardly a list at all. First, I thought, what about my company? We provide daily mental health support for people all over the world. Are they still going to get the help they need tomorrow? Well, one of my employees could likely prove in a court of law that they should inherit the company upon my death. Plus, because so much of what we do is automated, I'll bet none of our subscribers would even notice I'm gone. Once I knew they'd be okay without me, I moved on to the next item, my band. Yes, we play heavy metal, but I promise you our music brings people hope. We write about addiction, self-harm, sexual consent, all sorts of serious issues. We get messages all the time saying that our music has literally saved someone's life. But What happens if I'm not there to write it? Well, our guitarist has all our old demos. I'm sure he could salvage a few to release after my death. And once the band finds a new vocalist, they'll be able to tour again, bringing hope to audiences for years to come. And then nothing. I was finished with my list. No Lamborghinis, no thoughts of being a failure. In that moment, nothing else mattered. So I folded my hands in my lap, took a deep breath, and said out loud, in a dead silent plane, mind you, free-falling from 35,000 feet, I'll never forget this, I said my famous last words, "Okie dokie." Profound, right? But then a plot twist. The plane grew incredibly loud as the defective engine limped back to life. But the sound was kind of like a coffee grinder on its deathbed. If it was 3,000 decibels lodged against my eardrum and pulling the strings of fate. A glimmer of hope began to swell in me as the gravity in the plane returned to normal, but the relief wouldn't last. After about 30 seconds of white-knuckle finger crossing as we climbed in altitude, I heard an even worse noise. The gut-wrenching return of that awful, bone-chilling silence. The engine had retired once more, and my heart did a cartwheel as we entered freefall number 3, which would soon be followed by a 4th and a 5th. This taunting oscillation between hope for survival and reluctant acceptance would continue as the plane and everyone in it railed against our inevitable descent towards the ground below. You know, if you're diagnosed with a terminal illness and you're given 6 months to live, at least you have time to tie up loose ends and tell people you love them, and if you die unexpectedly, like in a car accident or in your sleep, there's no need for reconciliation, it just happens. But there's something uniquely bizarre about getting a 6-minute warning. It's not enough time to handle your affairs, but it's far too much advance notice to remain blissfully ignorant. Fittingly, I've always felt like I was running out of time. That's part of why I was so miserable, why I wanted to die. In a never-ending effort to prove to myself that I was enough, I turned my life into an impossible list of tasks I could never complete. A burden instead of what it really is. A gift. But when I was completely immobilized, when I knew there was nothing I could do about anything ever again, the disparity between who I was and the ideal version of myself that I never measured up to disappeared. And I felt peace. Maybe for the first time ever, my to-do list was irrelevant. There was nothing to live up to anymore. And that peace, that's what I wanted when I was suicidal, not death. I was just tired of feeling pain, tired of punishing myself for not being enough. And for years before this experience, I wanted to quit my company and my band for those exact reasons. Every day that Cope Notes didn't reach unicorn status and Prison didn't go platinum, I was able to justify making myself feel like a total failure. I didn't decide to continue pursuing both endeavors because we became more successful, or even in hopes that we would in the future. My circumstances didn't change. My perspective did. And if I'm being honest, it was much more of a YOLO thought process than I'd like to admit. I mean, why wouldn't I at least shoot my shot when the only guarantee is that we all wind up in the same place anyway? Why wouldn't I at least try to serve other people if they were the only thing I cared about in my last moments on earth? You might think, yeah, right, all you cared about was your career, but that's not true. I didn't care about my company or my band. I cared about the people we serve and whether or not they'd be okay the day after I died. I cared about people I had never met and people I'd never get to meet. All that mattered was people, not successes or failures or some bucket list. And I'm a people too, aren't I? If I could love strangers, why couldn't I love me? For the first quarter century of my life, I despised myself. But sitting in a plane that was about to crash taught me that I didn't despise Johnny Crowder. I didn't even know the guy. Abuse convinced me that he didn't deserve love, and I bought the lie. I never stopped loathing him for long enough to get to know him. And now that I was going to lose him, I had so many questions for him. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to kill somebody I never even met. Suicide is twofold. There's the criminal, the person in you that wants to kill yourself because of anger, disappointment, regret, whatever it is. And then there's the victim, the person who wants to die. Inside of me, these people were strangers. But sharing this near-death experience together made them want to understand each other. If that pilot hadn't pulled off one heck of an emergency landing, the man I wanted to kill, me, would have died. I never would have had the chance to meet him. I know it's hard to fully appreciate life until someone is yanking it out of your hands, but I sincerely believe that you wouldn't want to kill yourself if you got a chance to meet yourself. I'm here to argue that your logic might be flawed. What if death isn't the solution you think it is? The phrase suicide isn't an option used to bother me because it felt like it was stripping me of control. So maybe a better way to word it is, suicide is the option that is least likely to solve the problems you're trying to solve. If you turn to suicide seeking peace, you create chaos. If you turn to suicide in search of rest, you create restlessness. If you turn to suicide to avoid pain, you create much, much more of it. I do have good news for anyone considering suicide, though. One day, you will die. I can guarantee it. Someone or something will kill you. A germ on your sandwich, a faulty electrical wire. I don't know how you're going to go, but spoiler alert, you're going to go. But that's not your job. Remove your death from your to-do list. Better yet, replace your to-do list and your bucket list with a list of reasons to stick around for one more day. I call it a to-be list. Like my buddy Glenn says, we're not human doings, we're human beings. You see these tally marks on my arm? This is my gratitude checklist, aka my to-be list. And it's how I get to know myself on a daily basis. So every time I get stuck on a negative thought, I make myself list 10 things I'm thankful or hopeful for. This forces a perspective that guarantees the good will always outweigh the bad 10-1. To this day, I write a new list every single night before I go to bed. Now, do I still want to tour with Korn and Slipknot? Heck yes! I'm waiting for that email. Do I still want to waltz into a Lamborghini dealership like I own the place? Of course I do. But these won't be accomplishments, things I need to do to prove to myself that I'm enough. They're not my bucket list anymore. They're experiences I'm looking forward to sharing with my new friend, me. In fact, there's only one thing on my bucket list these days. I want to learn everything I can about this guy while he's still here. The more I learn about him, the less I want to hurt him. Turns out, he's not such a bad guy, and neither are you. So tonight, write down 10 reasons to stay alive for a little while longer. I don't care what they are, just write them down. On the gratitude side, maybe you love your dog like I love mine. On the hope side, get creative, use your imagination. Maybe you'll start a company that changes a bunch of people's lives. Maybe you'll write a song that helps people heal. Maybe you'll save someone from a burning building 6 years from now. The best day of your life could be scheduled for next month, for all you know. Do you really want to miss all that? My life motto is, tomorrow might be better, because it's never not true. But, oh yeah, took a second. But Even if none of that resonates with you, making this list is a good way to get to know yourself. And as you get to know yourself, the unfounded indifference and disdain you feel towards this innocent person inside of you will melt. You know why farmers in movies tell their kids not to get too friendly with the farm animals? Because it's hard to enjoy a crispy slice of bacon when you know it came at the expense of your favorite pet. It's hard to harm someone we've formed an attachment with, so form an attachment with yourself. Don't wait to get almost murdered by an airplane to start appreciating the life you have, serving other people, and being a better friend to yourself. It's been said that death is a great teacher, but what teacher likes being called in before their shift is supposed to start? Let death come when it comes. In the meantime, there is a beautiful person hidden inside of you who deserves to live. If you disagree, you just haven't met him yet. How could you not want to get to know that person while you still can? You don't have to wake up tomorrow. You get to. And I sincerely hope that you will. Thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. Thank you.